Pianta Village is kind of underwhelming. I'm not sure what the general consensus of this stage is, but seeing as how it's the last one unlocked in the game, I would have much rather preferred 2 or 3 other stages to cap off the adventure. Obviously, this is only in relation to those first 7 shines in each stage, since I'm saving all of the extra ones for after I've beaten the game with only the required shines. But based off the difficulty, the aesthetics, and the challenges on hand, I think Pianta Village would have been much better off as a first or second stage in the game. The shines here are all relatively easy to grab. There isn't too much platforming done outside of the maneuvering around the lower area, and given that it's a grassy theme and there are chain chomps, it could have been a fun bit of symmetry with Mario 64's Bob-omb Battlefield. Also, seeing as how the Piantas are the primary NPC in this game, starting us off in their village would have been a nice introduction to the characters and their way of life in general. But let's quickly run through the episodes at play here and continue the discussion at the end of the segment. Episode 1 entails chain chomp puppies running around the pathways and leaving a trail of burning goop behind them. If you get close to one, it'll get angry and attack you. You have to spray it to cool it down, and that'll give you an opening to grab onto its tail and stretch it back and fling the pup directly ahead of you. There's a body of water in the center of the stage that you're meant to launch all of the chain pups towards. It's fairly simple in theory, but the excessive burning goop everywhere, as well as the chain chomp's short fuses and their lunges towards you, will provide a bit of a challenge as you get comfortable with the area and how to carefully fling them around. A lot of the challenge here is just figuring out what you need to do and how to do it, which is a fair enough puzzle to solve prior to beginning the actual objective. Next up is another race with Il Piantissimo. I mean, what else can I say at this point? This far along the race against Il Piantissimo is similar to chasing Shadow Mario. It's a formality. You might lose the race the first time if you don't really know the path all that well, but I assure you if you fail the first time, you should realistically succeed the second time. The Goopy Inferno is probably one of the more difficult shines here. Perhaps the only difficult shine here. A player is meant to traverse through the mushrooms underneath the village and pop up where the objective lies. That objective, by the way, includes reuniting with Flood, since it's taken away from you at the start of the episode. Otherwise, you would have just sprayed your way through the goop. Now, I'm not sure if I've ever actually gotten this shine the legit way. I might have done so on my first playthrough because I recall spending a lot of time platforming in the area beneath the stage, but that might have been for the blue coins. I don't know if I figured this out on my own or if I looked up a guide, but I distinctly remember you could cheese this challenge by working your way around the village and accessing the channel of water which would take you to the little pond at the center of the stage. As you exit, the water droplets around Mario would actually put out some of the goopy fire on the land. So basically, if you keep side flipping and diving and spinning for a few minutes, you could create a long enough path in the grass to get over to the platform that holds Flood. This method is technically cheesing the star, but it's not even that easy of a cheese, and it really might be easier to just grab the shine the right way. It'll probably only take a little bit longer too if you're careful. I think I failed twice and had to start over while using the cheesing method, and on my third attempt I just barely cleared enough of the area to make it past the Goopy Inferno. Still though, I find this to be an enjoyable shine even if you're not doing it the intended way. The unintended way is really its own unique challenge too, so it might be more fun of an objective because you're effectively breaking the game. But after you make it across, you'll be reunited with Flood and you can spray the goop off of the Pianta at the top of the golden mushroom and he'll give you a shine. After that, it's another chain chomp into the water situation. Only this time, it's a fully grown chain chomp, and the means of which you move him changes a bit. Instead of flinging him across like you did his miniature counterparts, you grab his tail and pull him along the path and bring him to the bath. I think I just followed him until we were close enough to the bath and tugged his tail to make the distance shorter since you can only pull on it for a short while, but really this challenge was way easier than the ones with the pups. Episode 5 is a secret challenge shine, and the camera pans to a Yoshi egg as soon as you begin. That's because you need Yoshi's stomach acid juice to spray the entrance to the secret area. You simply pass by the egg to see what fruit it wants, go to the other corner of the stage, grab the fruit and come back to the beginning, drop down to the mushrooms below, and if you're careful and slow enough you can make it across pretty easily with Yoshi's flutter. Once you're in there, it's actually one of the more unique secret challenges in the game. This is the area with the chucksters. Wherever you approach the chuckster from, they will launch you straight in the opposite direction. I think this took me maybe 2 or 3 attempts to figure out. Most people find this to be obnoxious or frustrating, but compared to many of the other secret areas, I didn't mind it at all. I actually think it's a bit hilarious. Hearing Mario squeal when they chuck him is pretty entertaining too. If anything, my biggest gripe was how hard it was to get to the first chuckster to actually toss me up to the one up. I probably spent more time on that than I did the actual challenges ahead. There were a couple of points where a chuckster would throw me off the edge and I'd get a feel for how much I should or shouldn't be using the joystick once I'm in the air to manipulate my trajectory. But like I said, I didn't really find this to be frustrating, and the hilarity of it made me appreciate the challenge in general. I will not be adding this to my list of frustrating shines, but I will admit that this might be a very frustrating shine for others. I've always known what the chucksters were, probably because of Mario Party 8, but I found it easy. In episode 6, there are 10 Piantas on fire and you need to put them out. but not before bringing some of them up from the ground. You have a 3-minute time limit, which I think is more than enough time. I also noticed that when speaking to one of them, they gave me a blue coin, so I figured these were episode-specific coins worth grabbing because they were a bit more obvious. The only other time I did that intentionally was in Serena Beach, up in the ducks in the attic when I passed by a few blue coins up there. I'm not sure if grabbing them will make a whole ton of difference later on, but I just figured it's worth bringing up that I did complete 7 stages with something like 20 blue coins total, mostly because they were right along my path and I couldn't avoid them, or because they felt like they were hidden in spots that I wouldn't really revisit later. But still, that's like 10% of the blue coins, and I didn't go out of my way all that much for them, so I doubt it'll really change my blue coin hunt experience significantly later, since there are 30 in every stage. After you run back to the start of the stage and speak to the Pianta, he'll give you a shine and you'll be able to move on to episode 7. It's a Shadow Mario chase. That's it. On a flat plane no less. Takes like 30 seconds. But that's that. 7 stages, 49 shines. 50 total since we grabbed that one in the airstrip when the game first started. This is all that anyone is required to go through if they're looking just to beat the game without 100%ing it. They can now head over to Corona Mountain and face off against Bowser if they'd like. I don't really want to make a full-on conclusion for the stages here since I think a lot of those grander points are better discussed after we collect all the remaining shines and blue coins, but at the very least I'd like to rank these stages in order of which one is my favorite strictly through the first 7 episodes, because I want to see how much my opinion has changed later on when I grab the remaining shines and blue coins. Rico Harbor is above Bianco Hills. Gelato Beach is about on par with Bianco Hills. Pina Park is above those two but below Rico Harbor. Serena Beach is on par with Rico Harbor, and Noki Bay is on par with both of them. And Pianta Village sits next to the ones at the bottom. This feels short. Normally when I'm doing these rankings, there are way more things I'm comparing. So basically, top tier would be Rico Harbor, Serena Beach, and Noki Bay. Mid tier would be Pina Park, and low tier would be Bianco Hills, Gelato Beach, and Pianta Village. Funnily enough, this is sort of the order I think the stages should have been laid out in to give it a natural difficulty curve instead of the current one we got that seems to be all over the place. I'd start the game off with either Gelato Beach or Pianta Village. From a gameplay perspective, I think Gelato Beach makes more sense, but I would still favor Pianta Village because Piantas are the main cast of the game. But due to the simplicity of both of these levels, I'd be okay with either of them being the first stage, because I think either of them would be able to get players up to speed. After that, I move a player towards Bianco Hills because I think that stage does a lot to introduce players into the various types of challenges they'll undergo as the game goes on. Initially, I felt as though Bianco Hills was a great early game stage, but looking back now, I think it's a lot more advanced than both Gelato Beach and Pianta Village. And what you learn in those 2 stages will probably help a player get through some of the more obnoxious challenges in Bianco Hills anyway. I think a player heading into Bianco Hills after getting comfortable with the controls would enjoy it a lot more, whereas a player returning to Gelato Beach might not really feel that drastic of a difference. Again, this discussion is strictly in context of the first 7 episodes. After that, I'd say Pina Park would make a good mid-game stage, basically exactly where it already was, stage 4. Serena Beach would be my clear choice for the final stage in the game because I think it's the most complicated and most challenging of all the stages. Plus its darker haunted theme lends itself well to being a final stage. I'm torn between Noki Bay and Rico Park. I'm not sure which one should be 5th and which one should be 6th. I don't think you can go wrong with either one, so I'll stick with Rico Harbor prior to Noki Bay because I think the spectacle of Noki Bay is a bit more climactic, and it'd resonate more as an endgame stage than Rico Harbor. As I've been saying all throughout, part of the reason this game is so polarizing is because of the difficulty spikes all over the place. I think a lot of players started playing this game and found the adjustment to Mario's tight control to be much more difficult than they anticipated, especially in the secret challenges in the first 2 stages. I think teaching their thumbs to maneuver through FLUDD and properly aim their attacks while fighting in the back foot was not very enjoyable since they were playing a Mario game, and when you play Mario, you expect simplicity in your controls from the first minute. Seeing as how this game takes a couple of hours to warm up to, I think the challenges laid out in Pianta Village and Gelato Beach on average are much more welcoming than the remaining stages, especially in Gelato Beach. Bianco Hills, while still simple enough, can be right after them, when a player is much more comfortable with the controls so they can get through the moderate challenges after learning how to better control themselves. Pina Park makes sense to me as the next logical step up beyond Bianco Hills because it just requires that little bit of more accuracy. Rico Harbor likewise beyond that, instead of being the second stage in the game. As a latter half stage, players will enjoy getting around there much more than they would if they were trying to get a feel for how to play. Noki Bay would up the ante with all of its vertical platforming, and finally, Serena Beach would have some of the hardest and most tedious challenges, searching, and puzzle solving in the game. And a player with 5 or 6 hours under their belt would be more likely not only to accomplish that, but enjoy it as well. This isn't the full conclusion of my discussion of the stages in Mario Sunshine, and how they could have made the game better with minor tweaks, so I don't plan on getting further into those details yet. But at the very least, being someone that only played this game once back when 3D All-Stars first came out and is now revisiting it for the first time since then, and I've only strictly focused on the 7 episodes of the 7 stages, I can say with full confidence that these 49 shines alone make for a good Mario game. I won't say great because I think the difficulty curve screws it up, and also some of the shines need a handful of tweaks. And also the way the repeated boss fights are all clumped together, and the stage orders don't really make sense from a progression standpoint. But looking at this as a roughly 7-hour adventure, it is way more than worth your time to go through it, even if you decide you don't want to do the final boss fight. I realize most of you watching this have probably already played the game, so I'm not necessarily telling this to you, but I think the narrative around Mario Sunshine needs to be that the base game is not a collectathon. It is much more a linear action platformer. Unlike Mario 64, I don't need to give a ton of explanations as to why each shine is different enough and justified in kicking you back into the hub world, because I think in Sunshine it's a lot more obvious why it's done. I know people will make arguments against that, but at the very least we can all agree that even to those that think otherwise, it's not nearly as offensive as Mario 64 was. Almost every objective here feels like its own unique route, and the game helps guide you on that route by panning the camera whenever it's necessary. This is not a collectathon, not a scavenger hunt, not a searching game at all. Again, for the first 49 shines. This is a linear 3D platforming adventure camouflaged in open sandbox stages. Even the red coin shines are usually set up in a similar pattern to collect through some form of platforming rather than searching. The collection aspect of this game is virtually all bonus content. The reason I want to stress this point is because when you squint just right, all of a sudden these 49 shines suddenly become 49 linear stages that could have easily existed in one of the linear 3D Mario titles. It isn't until you get to the bonus content that squinting will now turn these sandbox stages into the setup of a collectathon. Seriously, I'm 49 stars in and I feel like I haven't properly searched a single one of these stages. Have you noticed I didn't do a single detailed breakdown of the stages like I did when I ran through Mario 64? It's because in Mario 64, you don't know where you're going, so you end up going everywhere. In Sunshine, if it was not on the pathway towards the shine, I still haven't seen it. This can even be compared to the 2D platformers. In Mario World, or New Super Mario Bros. Games for that matter, in the first run you simply get to the end of the game and beat Bowser. But when you come back and search for whatever MacGuffin exists in those titles, that's when you're searching every pixel and completely learning the stage. And those 2D games are linear platformers, just like what I'd argue is the base game for Mario Sunshine. All of that is to say that I think it should be made clearer that the actual collectathon portion of Mario Sunshine does not start until you start going for full completion. Because I, as someone that's always been in this gaming community and have played the game once before to full completion, never realized that. Like, I knew the blue coins and the 100 coin stars would carry a lot of the weight, but I didn't realize it was to this extent. I'm actually excited to continue on in the game now because I want to search the stages. I want to go through the actual collecting challenges. Outside of Serena Beach, I don't think I searched for anything. And it was basically a single shine in that hotel. Maybe two. I think I gave you somewhat of an outline early on in this retrospective about which order I'd tackle every aspect of this game. Pretty sure I said after 49 shines I'd head back to the beginning and go for the remaining 4 shines in each stage. So with that in mind, let's head back to where it all began and revisit the windmills of Bianco Hills.